Before Scania took over the laybys and DAF became the new workhorse, there was a badge that meant something in Britain. Foden. You didn't just drive a Foden, what you hauled with it, bragged about it, and passed it down. From dusty job sites to motorways, it was the truck you trusted. But today, it's gone. Wiped off the map. No more badge. No more factory. And the way it went down, let's just say, it wasn't pretty. Foden trucks were born tough, not just built for work, but built from it. Started back in the 1800s making steam wagons, they survived wars, recessions, and the death of British heavy industry. While other brands folded or sold out, Foden kept punching. Their trucks had this no-nonsense look. Square cabs, chunky axles, and that massive badge on the front like it was daring you to break it. Good luck, these things could pull a mountain. In the 70s and 80s, Fodens were everywhere. Construction sites, tipper fleets, recovery rigs, you name it. Drivers loved them because they were built to take a beating. Mechanics loved them because you could fix anything with a socket set and some attitude. And owners, they knew that buying a Foden meant uptime. You weren't babysitting a fragile rig, you were investing in a beast that just kept going. Part of the magic? They used real engines, big ones. Cummins L10s, Gardner 6 LXB, Rolls-Royce Eagles, the kind that rumbled when you fired them up and didn't quit unless you drained the tank or blew the drive shaft trying, and they were customizable. You didn't get one factory option. You spec'd the truck the way you needed it. Want leaf springs instead of air? Done. Want a day cab, sleeper, rigid, tractor? They'd build it. But here's where it started to go sideways. By the early 90s, the game was changing. The market was globalizing. Emissions rules started tightening. Electronics crept in. And suddenly, being a family-run British lorry company wasn't enough. Foden tried to adapt. They rolled out updated cabs, smarter layouts, and even worked closely with Cummins to refine performance. But while they were busy playing catch-up, the big boys were circling. Then came Packer, the US truck giant, the same company that owns Kenworth and Peterbilt. They bought Foden in the late 80s and said all the right things. We believe in the brand. We'll keep the factory running. You know the drill. At first, not much changed. Trucks still looked like Fodens, still had the badge, still had that British grit. But slowly, things shifted. Cab design started coming from DAF, engines were more regulated, custom orders got trimmed down, and the soul of the trucks and the part that made it feel like a Foden started slipping away. At first it was subtle. You'd see the odd part that looked more Dutch than English. Then entire units started rolling out that were just rebadged DAFs with Foden logos slapped on the front. And the factory, that iconic sandbag site where Fodens were built since forever, gone. Shut down in 2006. Just like that. No farewell model, no celebration. Just a cold press release and lights out. The final truck rolled off the line. A 6x4 Alpha. And that was it. A brand that survived steam engines, 2 world wars, and the entire collapse of British manufacturing, gone in a boardroom decision. What made it worse? Drivers noticed. Talk to anyone who drove Fodens back in the day, and they'll tell you the newer ones didn't have the same feel. The older ones, the S80s, S104s, and classic Alpha series, had personality. You felt connected. The later ones, more plastic, less soul, just another rebadge on a corporate balance sheet. It didn't matter how efficient they weren't Fodens anymore. And here's the real kicker. Foden didn't die because the trucks were bad. They were great. It died because the business got swallowed. Because global companies don't care about heritage. They care about margins. And when it came time to choose between DAF and Foden, Packer made their pick. They chose the brand with the wider European footprint. Foden was too small, too old school, too British, so they axed it. Just like that, one of the UK's most respected truck brands became a trivia answer. After the factory gates closed in Sandbach and the press went silent, it didn't take long for reality to hit. Foden was gone, and drivers across the country felt it. Guys who grew up in the cabs, whose dads and uncles had run fleets of them, were now being told to hop into DAFs, Volvos, or whatever the fleet manager signed off on. Nothing wrong with those trucks, but they weren't the same. They didn't feel earned. See, Foden wasn't just a brand, it was a badge of grit. You knew when you stepped into a Foden, you weren't in a soft Euro cruiser. These things were loud, raw, and unapologetically mechanical. You heard the turbo spool up, felt the vibration in the floor, and had to drive it. None of that automatic cushioned ride nonsense. That's what people loved. That's what people missed. And now, it was over, or at least that's what everyone thought. But Foden didn't die quietly. After the shutdown, a weird thing started happening. Instead of fading into history, Foden started showing up more. Not in new sales, obviously, but in fleets that refused to let them go. In tipper work, in quarries, on farms, in recovery. Some got bought up by old school operators who weren't ready to trade in their heritage. Others stayed in families. Dad ran one in the 80s. Now the son's hauling gravel with it in 2015. Because even beat up and patched with rust, they still worked. And people started rebuilding them, restoring them, loving them in a way most modern trucks never get loved. Because a Foden wasn't disposable. It was built to be taken apart and brought back to life. New turbo? Easy. Repaint. Done in the yard with a roller and pride. Some even converted old Alpha cabs onto newer chassis just to keep the spirit alive. Because when something means that much, you don't let it rot in the corner. Then came the shows. Truck festivals, vintage rallies. And suddenly there's a whole scene dedicated to keeping Foden alive. People rolling in with mint condition S21s. Polished alloys gleaming. Kids staring up at the squared off grills like it's a monster out of a different world. And it was. These trucks didn't look like the curved, soft-edged haulers of today. They looked like machines. Unapologetic, industrial, real. You could see the difference too. Pull up next to a 30-year-old Foden at a truck meet and just listen. No emissions tuning, no digital whine, just that proper diesel thump. You could smell it, feel it, respect it, and drivers would gather around like it was a war veteran, because that's what it was. A survivor from an era when trucks were made to fight through anything. The legacy didn't stop with just nostalgia either. Foden's DNA lived on in ways people didn't even notice. A lot of the truck building expertise in the UK didn't vanish. It just spread out. Former Foden engineers went on to work for other companies. Their know-how built into specialist rigs, military platforms, and custom heavy haulers. The spirit of Foden, build it tough, fix it yourself, never let it down, that lived on through the hands that made them. And while the big manufacturers today chase comfort, fuel efficiency, and silent cabins, there's still a little voice in the back of every veteran driver's mind that says, yeah, but could it do what my old Foden did? Because that's the thing. It's not about horsepower numbers or touchscreen dashboards. It's about what the truck gave you when the going got bad. When you were 10 hours deep into a muddy back road haul, rain pouring sideways, gears grinding, and nothing between you and the job but your machine. That's when Foden showed its worth. It didn't care about polish, it cared about pulling. Packer may have pulled the plug, but they couldn't kill the culture, couldn't delete the history, couldn't erase the way a Foden felt under your boots, or how it sounded rumbling up a cold-started hill with a full payload and no complaints. That stuff doesn't die in a boardroom. It just gets handed down, truck by truck, story by story. You can shut down a factory, you can kill a nameplate, but you can't kill what it stood for. Foden wasn't just a truck, it was a symbol of British backbone, of no-frills hauling power, of loyalty earned mile by mile. And as long as one's still kicking up dust on a back road or shining in the sun at a truck rally, the legend's not just alive, it's untouchable.